The message came to every corner of the galaxy on the same day. It appeared on screens, echoed through communication systems, and reached even the smallest ships drifting in the dark spaces between stars. The Galactic Council was announcing something that had not happened in over 3,000 years. The Grand Trial of Species. Every spacefaring civilization was invited to send their best champion. The competition would test everything that made a species worthy of respect among the stars. Intelligence, strength, adaptability, and something harder to measure: character. The prize remained a mystery. The council said only that it was beyond wealth, beyond territory, beyond any political power. This made everyone curious and a little afraid. Humanity received the invitation with mixed feelings. They had only discovered faster-than-light travel 40 years ago. Their ships were slow compared to the ancient races. Their colonies numbered only 12 worlds, while others ruled hundreds. When the older species heard that humans intended to participate, they laughed. The Vithari, beings made of living crystal who had mastered energy manipulation before humans had discovered fire, considered it amusing. The Krix, a hive-mind species that shared thoughts across millions of bodies, calculated humanity's chance of victory at less than 1%. The Solareth, proud warriors who had conquered half the galaxy before choosing peace, saw humans as children playing at adult games. But humanity sent a champion anyway. His name was Daniel Hayes. He was 34 years old, a lieutenant commander in the Earth Coalition Navy. He was not the strongest soldier, not the smartest scientist, and certainly not the smoothest diplomat. The selection committee had reviewed hundreds of candidates with better records, higher test scores, and more impressive achievements. They chose Daniel for reasons they could not fully explain. There was something in his psychological profile that stood out. He had failed missions before, and had come back from those failures. He had made mistakes and learned from them. He possessed a quality that the committee simply called stubbornness, though that word did not capture it completely. Daniel Hayes did not know how to give up. More importantly, he did not know how to stop caring about others, even when caring made things harder for himself. Daniel arrived at the competition station after a 3-week journey. The station was enormous, a ring structure large enough to hold several cities, orbiting a star that was slowly dying. The dying star filled half the sky with orange and red light, a constant reminder that even the universe had endings. He stepped off his small transport ship and immediately felt out of place. The docking bay was filled with vessels from across the galaxy. Some were beautiful works of art, their hulls covered in patterns that seemed to shift and move. Others were massive warships that made his transport look like a toy. Beings of every shape moved through the bay. Some walked on legs, others floated, and a few existed as clouds of light or sound. A Vithari passed him without acknowledgement, its crystalline body catching the dying star's light and breaking it into rainbows. A group of Solareth warriors, each standing over 7 feet tall with golden skin and 4 arms, glanced at him and dismissed him with subtle expressions of contempt. A Krix drone paused to scan him with its compound eyes before moving on, already sharing data about the small human with its collective mind. Daniel found his assigned quarters, a small room clearly designed for the least important participants. He did not complain. He unpacked his few belongings, looked at the photograph of his younger sister he always carried, and reminded himself why he was here. Humanity needed to prove itself, not to conquer anyone, not to gain power, but simply to earn a seat at the table. The galaxy was vast and dangerous, and Earth was very small. If humans could not show that they belonged among the stars, they would forever remain outsiders, tolerated but never respected. The opening ceremony took place in a massive arena carved from the station's core. Thousands of spectators filled the viewing platforms, representing hundreds of species. At the center of the arena, The champions stood in a circle, facing a raised platform where the judges would sit. Daniel counted his competitors. 47 champions from 47 species. He recognized some from his briefings. The Solaref had sent a warrior named Krath, whose military record included victories in over 200 personal combat situations. The Vithari champion was Christine, a philosopher-scientist who had solved mathematical problems that had puzzled her species for millennia. The Crix had sent a specialized combat drone enhanced beyond normal parameters. The Machina Collective, a civilization of artificial intelligences, was represented by Unit 7, a sentient ship mind housed in a humanoid body. These were beings who had trained for centuries, who possessed abilities humans could barely understand, who came from civilizations that had been building empires while humans were still learning to farm. And Daniel stood among them, with nothing but his training, his determination, and his stubborn human heart. Then the lights dimmed, and she appeared. Empress Zyratha of the Valanthi Dominion descended from above on a platform of solid light. The arena fell completely silent. Even the most powerful champions seemed to shrink in her presence. She was humanoid in shape, but clearly not human. Her skin was silver, smooth as polished metal. Her eyes were deep black, filled with swirling points of light that looked like captured galaxies. She moved with a grace that suggested her body was merely a choice, a form she wore because it pleased her. The Valanthi were the oldest known species, so ancient that they had been old when the Vithari were young. They had watched civilizations rise and fall across millions of years. Zyratha ruled the Valanthi Dominion, 47 star systems, and countless billions of subjects. Her fleets could darken the skies of any world. Her technology could extinguish stars. She was, by any reasonable measure, the most powerful being in the known galaxy. And she looked directly at Daniel Hayes. It lasted only a moment. Her galaxy-filled eyes met his, and something passed between them, recognition perhaps, or curiosity. Then her gaze moved on, sweeping across all the champions equally. "Welcome," she said, her voice carrying without amplification to every corner of the arena. "You have come seeking glory, seeking honor, seeking the prize that awaits the victor. Some of you will fall in the trials ahead. Some will rise, but only one will prove worthy of what I offer." She paused, and the silence was absolute. "The trials begin tomorrow. Rest well, champions. You will need your strength." She ascended back into the darkness above, and the ceremony ended. Champions and spectators began to disperse, talking in excited voices about what lay ahead. Daniel remained where he stood for a long moment, thinking about that brief exchange of glances. The most powerful being in the galaxy had looked at him, a human, as if she had been waiting for him specifically. He did not understand what it meant, but he knew, with a certainty he could not explain, that he had not come here by accident. Something was beginning, something larger than a simple competition. And Daniel Hayes, stubborn human that he was, intended to see it through to the end. The first trial began without warning. Daniel woke to alarms screaming through the station. Before he could fully understand what was happening, a beam of light surrounded him and pulled him away from his quarters. He felt his body dissolve and reform, and then he was standing on the surface of a hostile world. Heat struck him like a physical force. The ground beneath his feet was black volcanic rock, cracked and glowing with orange light from the lava flowing beneath. The sky was choked with ash and smoke. In the distance, volcanoes erupted continuously, throwing molten rock high into the poisonous air. Daniel wore only a basic survival suit, the same equipment every champion had been given. It would protect him from the worst of the heat and filter the air so he could breathe. But it would not last forever. A timer appeared in his vision, projected by the suit's display system. He had 12 hours to reach the extraction point on the far side of this hellish landscape. He started moving immediately. Standing still meant death. Across the volcanic plain, other champions were doing the same. Daniel could see some of them in the distance. The Crick's drone moved with mechanical efficiency, calculating the optimal path. Christine the Vethari glowed with internal light as she used her crystalline body to absorb and redirect the heat around her. Krath the Solareth warrior ran across the lava fields with powerful strides, his golden skin apparently immune to temperatures that would cook a human alive. Daniel had none of these advantages. He was soft, fragile, and slow. The heat made every breath painful. Sweat poured down his face inside his helmet. He stumbled on the uneven ground and burned his hands when he caught himself on the hot rocks. But he kept moving. 3 hours into the trial, he found her. A young Talari female named Suvi had crashed on a rocky outcrop surrounded by a fresh lava flow. The Talari were a winged species, graceful flyers who rarely touched the ground. But Suvi's wings had been badly burned in a volcanic eruption, and she could not fly to safety. She was trapped, and the lava was slowly surrounding her position. Daniel calculated his options. If he tried to help her, he would lose precious time. The extraction point was still far away, and his suit's power was already dropping faster than expected. Helping her might mean failing the trial entirely. He changed direction and headed toward her anyway. Reaching Suvi required crossing a narrow strip of cooling lava. Daniel felt the heat through his boots, felt the suit's warnings screaming at him about dangerous temperature levels. He ignored them and kept going. When he reached her, she looked at him with wide, pain-filled eyes. "You will fail if you help me." "Maybe," Daniel said. "Can you walk?" She could, barely. Her wings hung useless behind her, the delicate membranes blackened and torn. Daniel put her arm over his shoulder and half-carried her across the volcanic landscape. Every step was agony. His suit was failing. His body was reaching its limits. They reached the extraction point with 11 minutes to spare. Daniel was the 42nd champion to arrive, near the bottom of the rankings. Suvi was disqualified from the trial due to her injuries, but would survive thanks to his help. The judges noted his decision in their records. So did someone else, watching from high above. The second trial tested intelligence. Champions were placed in a vast labyrinth that seemed to extend forever in all directions. Puzzles blocked every path. Mathematical problems, logical sequences, spatial challenges that adapted to each species' way of thinking. Daniel watched other champions solve these puzzles with elegant efficiency. Unit 7, the machine intelligence, processed information faster than thought. Christine approached each puzzle as a philosophical question to be contemplated. Krath used warrior's logic, finding the most direct path through every obstacle. Daniel took a different approach. He talked to himself constantly, arguing both sides of every problem. He made jokes that no one else could hear. He looked for shortcuts and unconventional solutions. When a puzzle seemed impossible, he would step back and ask himself a simple question. What would a human do? Humans were not the smartest species, but they were creative in ways that sometimes surprised even themselves. Daniel found solutions that were not elegant, not optimal, but effective. He climbed walls that were meant to be barriers. He combined puzzle elements in ways the designers had not anticipated. He treated the labyrinth not as a test, but as a game to be played. He finished in the middle of the rankings, better than expected. The monitoring systems recorded everything: his muttering, his jokes, his strange human way of thinking through problems. The data was transmitted to a silver figure watching from a private viewing chamber. Empress Zaretha leaned forward slightly, her galaxy eyes focused on the small human stumbling through her maze. She had designed these trials herself, carefully crafted them over centuries. She knew every possible approach, had seen every strategy attempted thousands of times. She had never seen anyone approach them quite like this. The third trial tested something harder to measure: moral character. Champions were placed in situations where they had to choose between personal advancement and helping others. The scenarios were complex, the ethical dilemmas carefully designed to reveal true nature. Daniel faced his choice in a simulation that felt completely real. He was ahead in points, positioned to break into the top rankings. Then he discovered a group of non-competitor observers trapped in a section of the testing facility that was about to be sealed and flooded with toxic gas. The rules were clear. Saving them would cost him his position. The points he would lose for deviating from the test path would drop him near the bottom of the standings. Every other champion who faced similar choices calculated the costs and made the logical decision. Personal advancement served their species better in the long run. Daniel ran toward the trapped observers. He used his suit's remaining power to force open the sealed door. He guided the frightened beings to safety, carrying the smallest ones when they could not move fast enough. When the trial ended, he had dropped to 45th place out of 47 remaining champions. His Earth Coalition handlers sent an angry message about representing humanity's interests. Political commentators across the galaxy wondered why the humans had sent such a poor competitor. But in her private chamber, Empress Ziritha smiled for the first time in more years than she could remember. She had watched 10,000 champions across millennia of competitions. Warriors, geniuses, heroes of every kind had walked through her trials. They had all calculated advantages. They had all made the logical choice. This human kept choosing the illogical option, and somehow it felt like he was the only one making the right choice. She began to wonder if she had finally found what she had been searching for. All these lonely centuries among the stars. Strange things began happening after the third trial. Daniel would find useful information in his personal terminal that he had not searched for. Warnings about dangerous sections of the station would arrive just before he walked into them. Small advantages appeared in his path: better equipment, helpful hints about upcoming challenges, always from anonymous sources. At first, Daniel suspected sabotage disguised as help. Perhaps another champion was setting traps, but the assistance was always genuine. Someone was watching out for him, and he could not understand why. The other champions had begun to notice the human. His refusal to play by expected rules disrupted carefully planned strategies. In the fourth trial, Daniel's unconventional approach accidentally revealed a hidden path that several other champions had missed. In the fifth trial, his insistence on helping a struggling competitor created a temporary alliance that confused the judges' scoring systems. Krath the Solareth grew increasingly frustrated. The Golden Warrior confronted Daniel in a corridor between trials, his forearms crossed in a posture of contained aggression. "What is your strategy, human?" Krath demanded. "You sacrifice advantage at every opportunity. You waste resources helping competitors. You ignore logical paths for emotional choices. Yet you survive. Explain yourself." Daniel looked up at the towering Solareth. Krath could break him in half without effort. His species had been warriors for millions of years, their culture built entirely around concepts of strength, honor, and dominance. "I don't have a strategy," Daniel said honestly. "I'm just doing what feels right." Krath stared at him with golden eyes. "That is not an answer. No competitor enters these trials without purpose. What do you seek? Power for your species? Political advantage? Personal glory?" Daniel thought about it carefully. "I want to prove that humanity belongs here, that we're not just primitive newcomers who got lucky with technology. I want to show that we have something to offer the galaxy, even if we're not the strongest or the smartest." "What could you possibly offer?" Krath asked with genuine confusion. Your species is young, weak, and chaotic. You fight among yourselves constantly. Your history is filled with violence and foolishness. What value does this have? I don't know, Daniel admitted. Maybe that's what I'm trying to figure out. Kreth studied him for a long moment, then turned and walked away without another word. The Solareth could not comprehend someone competing without a clear objective. It went against everything his culture understood about competition and purpose. A week later, the remaining champions were invited to a formal reception. This was tradition, a chance for competitors to interact socially, form temporary alliances, or study each other's weaknesses. Servants moved through the elegant hall, carrying refreshments suited to dozens of different biological needs. Music played from instruments that existed in dimensions humans could not perceive. Daniel stood near a window, looking out at the dying star that lit this strange station. He felt out of place among these ancient, powerful beings. His formal uniform seemed shabby compared to the elaborate garments and natural magnificence surrounding him. You look uncomfortable. The voice came from behind him. Daniel turned and found himself face to face with Empress Cyritha. She was even more striking up close. Her silver skin seemed to glow with internal light. Her galaxy eyes contained depths that made him dizzy when he looked too long. She wore a simple gown of dark material that seemed to absorb light around it, making her shine brighter by contrast. Your Majesty, Daniel managed, attempting a bow that he immediately felt was awkward and insufficient. Walk with me, she said. It was not a request. They stepped onto a balcony that extended out over empty space. The dying star filled the sky, painting everything in shades of red and gold. The noise of the reception faded behind them. You have been receiving assistance, Cyritha said. Have you wondered who was helping you? Daniel's heart beat faster. I suspected it might be some kind of test. In a way, it was. She looked at him with those impossible eyes. I have been watching you, Daniel Hayes. You confuse me. I confuse a lot of people, Your Majesty. A tiny smile touched her silver lips. No, you misunderstand. I have lived for 12,000 years. I have seen the rise and fall of civilizations. I have watched species evolve from primitive creatures to star-faring empires, and then watched them fade into extinction. Nothing has confused me for a very long time. She turned to face the dying star. Her profile was sharp and beautiful in its alien way. I created these trials, she continued. Not the council, not the judges, me. I have run them for 3,000 years, searching for something I had lost. I did not expect to find it in the youngest and weakest species. What are you looking for? Daniel asked. Hope, she said simply. My people achieved perfection long ago. We have no disease, no death unless we choose it, no wants that cannot be satisfied. We solved every problem, answered every question, and conquered every challenge. And then we discovered that perfection is simply another word for ending. We have no struggles, Daniel. No growth, no surprises. We exist, but we do not truly live. I have watched your species for decades, studying you as you reached for the stars. You are fragile, brief, contradictory creatures. You make terrible mistakes and then repeat them. Your history is chaos and pain. That's not exactly encouraging, Daniel said. And yet, Cyritha's voice softened. You also love fiercely. You hope against all logic. You help strangers for no reason. You create beauty in the midst of suffering. You possess something we surrendered for our perfection, the capacity to be genuinely surprised by yourselves. The weight of her words settled over Daniel like a heavy blanket. He was beginning to understand something. The prize, he said slowly, it's not territory or technology or political power, is it? No. Cyritha met his eyes. The prize is me, marriage, a permanent alliance with the Valenthi Dominion. Any species would sacrifice anything for such an advantage. Daniel felt the galaxy shifting around him. But that's not why you created the competition. No, she admitted. I created it to find someone who could teach me how to hope again. Someone whose species had not forgotten how to be surprised, how to care without calculation, how to live instead of merely existing. She reached out and touched his face with cool silver fingers. I have watched you sacrifice advantage to help others. I have seen you make choices that serve no logical purpose except kindness. You confuse me, Daniel Hayes, and I have not been confused in millennia. Daniel stood very still, feeling the weight of history pressing down on him. An ancient empress, lonely beyond human comprehension, had been searching across thousands of years for something his species possessed without knowing its value. The trials aren't over, he said finally. No, Zaretha agreed. There is still the final challenge, and you are far from victory. Many champions remain who are stronger, smarter, and better positioned than you. She withdrew her hand and stepped back, her expression becoming formal again. But I wanted you to understand the true nature of what you are competing for. Not power, not wealth, something far more precious and far more difficult. She turned and walked back toward the reception, leaving Daniel alone with the dying star and the weight of everything she had revealed. He had come to prove that humanity belonged among the stars. Now he understood that something far greater was at stake, and the most powerful being in the galaxy was watching to see if a simple human could surprise her one more time. The tournament narrowed to 4 finalists. Daniel Hayes, the stubborn human who had somehow survived every elimination. Krath, the Solarith, whose warrior skills had crushed all opposition. Christine, the Vetheri, whose brilliant mind had solved every puzzle. And Unit 7 of the Machina Collective, the artificial intelligence whose calculations were always perfect. They stood together in the arena, waiting for the announcement of the final trial. The spectators had grown to fill every available space. Billions more watched through broadcast systems across the galaxy. What had begun as a curiosity, humans participating in an ancient competition, had become the most watched event in recent memory. The judges revealed the final challenge, a rescue mission. A colony ship carrying thousands of refugees from a dying system had become trapped in a collapsing dimensional rift. The ship was breaking apart, its passengers scattered across multiple failing sections. The champions would be transported to the disaster zone and given one objective: save as many lives as possible. Points would still be awarded. The highest scorer would claim the prize. But the nature of the challenge meant that cooperation might serve better than competition. Daniel felt something tighten in his chest as he listened to the briefing. This was different from the earlier trials. Real lives were at stake, not simulations. The refugees were actual beings who would actually die if the champions failed. The 4 finalists were transported to the disaster zone. Daniel materialized in a section of the colony ship that was already losing atmosphere. Emergency lights flickered, warning systems screamed. In the distance, he could hear the groaning of metal under stress, the sound of a ship tearing itself apart. He moved immediately, following his suit's sensors toward the nearest group of survivors. He found them huddled in a cargo bay, 30 frightened beings of various species, mostly children and elderly, who had been unable to reach the escape pods. Daniel guided them toward a more stable section of the ship, his training taking over as he managed the evacuation. Across the dying ship, the other champions worked with varying approaches. Unit 7 calculated the most efficient rescue patterns and executed them precisely. Christine used her abilities to stabilize failing structural systems, buying time for others. Krath moved through the wreckage like a golden storm, his 4 arms pulling survivors from debris with tremendous strength. They were making progress. The refugees were being saved. But the competition continued beneath the cooperation. Points accumulated. Rankings shifted with each rescue. Krath watched Daniel from across a burning corridor. The human was ahead in rescues, having found a large group of survivors that the Soloreth had missed. If the current pattern continued, Daniel would score higher in this trial, possibly high enough to threaten Krath's position. The Soloreth warrior made a decision. During a moment when no one was watching, Krath sabotaged Daniel's equipment. He corrupted the human's navigation system, sending false data that would lead Daniel into a dying section of the ship. He also damaged Daniel's communication array, preventing him from calling for help. Daniel followed his sensors toward what they showed as a group of survivors. Instead, he found himself in a section of the ship that was minutes from catastrophic failure. The dimensional rift was pulling this entire area into a space where normal physics did not apply. Soon, everything here would be crushed into nothing, and the section was not empty. Nearly 300 refugees were trapped here, beings who had been overlooked because the failing sensors showed this area as already lost. Daniel found them gathered in a large assembly hall, their hope fading as the walls groaned and buckled around them. His suit displayed the damage to his systems. Navigation was offline. Communications were dead. Power reserves were dropping rapidly. He had enough energy to save himself, to boost through the failing structure and reach safety before the collapse. But he did not have enough to do that, and also maintain the emergency shields that were currently keeping these 300 refugees alive. Daniel understood what had happened. Someone had sent him here deliberately. Someone wanted him to fail or to die. He also understood his choices: save himself and let 300 innocent beings die, or use his remaining power to keep them alive as long as possible, and hope that help would come in time. It was not really a choice at all. Daniel redirected all remaining suit power to the emergency shield generators. He felt the protective field around his own body weaken and fail. The heat and radiation of the collapsing rift began to burn through his uniform. Pain lanced through him as his skin started to blister. He stood in the center of the assembly hall, arms raised as if he could hold back the disaster through will alone, and he kept the shields running. Christine noticed first. The Vethari philosopher observed that Daniel's signal had disappeared from the tracking systems, and something about the pattern of failures suggested interference rather than accident. She investigated and discovered the sabotage in the ship's sensor network. She broadcast her findings to the entire tournament audience, her crystalline voice carrying across all frequencies. Champion Krath of the Soloreth has violated the sacred rules of competition. He has attempted murder through deception. The honor of his species is forfeit. The galaxy watched as the truth emerged. Krath's betrayal was exposed before billions of viewers. The Soloreth warrior, whose entire culture was built around concepts of honor and fair combat, had cheated in the most cowardly way possible. Back in the dying section of the ship, Daniel was losing consciousness. His body was failing. The shields were failing. He had bought the refugees perhaps 10 extra minutes, but it would not be enough. Then a shape appeared in the chaos. Suvi, the Talari, whose wings Daniel had saved in the first trial, had volunteered for the rescue teams. She had been searching for him since Christine's broadcast. She found the failing section and called for immediate extraction. Emergency transport beams cut through the dimensional interference. One by one, the refugees were pulled to safety. Daniel was the last to be extracted, his body badly burned, his vital signs barely registering. He woke in a medical bay, surrounded by advanced healing technology. His injuries were severe, but treatable. The Volanthi had medical science that could repair almost any damage short of actual death. Empress Zaretha stood beside his bed, her galaxy eyes unreadable. "You were willing to die for strangers," she said, "beings you had never met, species you did not know. You gave everything for them without hesitation." Daniel's voice was rough, damaged by the radiation exposure. "Seemed like the right thing to do." "The right thing." Zaretha's voice carried a note of wonder. The right thing cost you the competition. The right thing nearly killed you. The right thing served no logical purpose except to save lives that had no connection to your own. She leaned closer, her silver face filling his vision. In 12,000 years, I have never seen anyone make that choice with such complete certainty. No calculation, no hesitation, no thought of reward. Just pure, irrational, beautiful selflessness. Daniel managed a weak smile. Humans are pretty stupid sometimes. No, Zaritha said softly. Humans are something we had forgotten existed. Something my people surrendered so long ago that we did not even remember losing it. She straightened and looked toward the viewing window, where the dying star continued its slow collapse. The final ranking will be announced soon. Rest now, Daniel Hayes. Whatever happens next, you have already shown me what I was searching for. She left him alone with his healing wounds and his confused thoughts, not knowing that everything was about to change in ways neither of them could have predicted. The final ceremony gathered every remaining participant, every spectator, and every official in the great arena where the competition had begun. The dying star painted the sky in shades of red and gold, its light streaming through the massive windows like the last breath of an ancient god. Daniel stood among the finalists, his body still healing, his mind still processing everything that had happened. Beside him stood Unit 7, its mechanical form perfectly still. Christine glowed with soft light, her crystalline structure catching the starlight. Krath was absent, disqualified in disgrace, his honor shattered before the entire galaxy. The judges announced the final rankings with great ceremony, based on objective metrics: lives saved, efficiency of actions, successful completion of all trial phases. Unit 7 of the Machina Collective had achieved the highest score. The artificial intelligence had calculated optimal outcomes and executed them perfectly. By the rules of the competition, the Machina should claim the prize. Christine placed second. Her brilliant solutions and crucial role in exposing Krath's betrayal had earned her significant points. She accepted her ranking with philosophical calm. Daniel placed third. His sacrifice during the final trial had saved many lives, but the time lost to Krath's sabotage had cost him in the rankings. By every measurable standard, he had been outperformed. The representative of the Machina Collective stepped forward to accept the prize. Billions of viewers across the galaxy watched as the machine intelligence prepared to claim an alliance with the most powerful empire in known space. The political implications were staggering. The Machina would become dominant, their logical perfection combined with Valanthi power, creating a force that nothing could oppose. Then Empress Zaritha rose from her throne. Not even the distant rumble of the dying star could be heard. Every eye, every sensor, every attention in the galaxy focused on the silver figure descending the steps of her platform. I designed these trials, she said, her voice reaching every corner of the arena without amplification. 3,000 years ago, I created them to find something I had lost. The rules were my rules. The metrics were my metrics. And I reserved for myself one final judgment that no score could measure. She walked past Unit 7 without acknowledgement. The machine intelligence stood frozen, its calculations suddenly worthless. She walked past Christine, who bowed her crystalline head in understanding. She stopped in front of Daniel Hayes. The trials tested intelligence, Zaritha continued, addressing the entire assembly while looking only at him. Unit 7 demonstrated superior processing. The trials tested strength, and Krath showed greater physical power before his disgrace. The trials tested knowledge, and Christine's understanding exceeds any human's. By every objective measure, Daniel Hayes should have been eliminated in the first round. She paused, letting her words settle over the confused crowd. But I did not create these trials to find the most intelligent, the strongest, or the most knowledgeable. I created them to find something far more rare. Something my ancient species had forgotten how to recognize. Something that cannot be measured by any metric because it exists beyond measurement. She reached out and took Daniel's hands in her cool silver fingers. I was searching for genuine selflessness, for choices made without calculation of benefit, for hope maintained against all logic, for love extended to strangers without expectation of return. Her galaxy eyes met his ordinary human ones. Unit 7. You helped Daniel during the final trial because you calculated that his survival would eventually serve your interests. Your assistance was logical, reasonable, and ultimately selfish. Christine, you exposed Krath because truth is a philosophical principle you value. Your actions served your understanding of the universe. She smiled at Daniel, and for a moment her ancient face looked almost young. But you, Daniel Hayes, saved Suvi when helping her guaranteed your failure. You sacrificed your position for observers who meant nothing to your mission. You gave your life for refugees you had never met, with no hope of rescue, no audience to witness your nobility, no calculation of reward. You acted from something your species possesses that we have lost, the ability to care simply because caring is right. She turned to face the assembly, still holding his hands. The prize for this tournament was always meant to be me, not merely an alliance, but a true partnership. And I choose to honor that prize only with someone who earned it through more than victory. The arena erupted in confusion. Voices shouted in dozens of languages. The Machina representative began calculating objections. Political analysts across the galaxy struggled to understand what was happening. Zyritha silenced them all with a single raised hand. I have watched the galaxy for 12,000 years. I have seen empires rise and fall, species evolve and go extinct, stars born and die. I have grown weary of existence because I had forgotten that existence could contain surprise. I had forgotten that beings could choose irrationally and beautifully. I had forgotten what hope felt like. She looked at Daniel with something that might have been tears forming in her galaxy eyes, if such ancient beings could still cry. Your species lives brief lives, filled with chaos and pain. You make terrible mistakes. You fight among yourselves. You are fragile and foolish and utterly, completely mortal. But you also love without reason, hope without evidence, and help without reward. You are everything my people surrendered for perfection, and I want to learn from you how to live again. Daniel finally found his voice. I'm not special, he said. I'm just human. Most of us would have made the same choices. I know, Zyritha said, and her smile grew wider. That is what makes your species so remarkable. The extraordinary is ordinary to you. Kindness is not exceptional. It is expected. You save strangers because, of course, you save strangers. That is who you are. She turned to face the arena one final time. Let it be known across all systems and all species. Humanity has won the grand trial, not through strength or intelligence or cunning, but through the simple virtue of being human. The Volanthi Dominion enters alliance with the Earth Coalition, and I, Empress Zyritha, take Daniel Hayes as my partner, not because he conquered, but because he cared. The political implications would take years to fully understand. Humanity, the youngest spacefaring species, had gained an ally that made them untouchable. No empire would threaten Earth while the Volanthi protected it. No species would dismiss humans as primitive newcomers, when the most powerful being in the galaxy had chosen one as her equal. But standing in the arena, holding hands with an ancient empress under a dying star, Daniel understood that none of that mattered as much as what she had really given him. She had reminded humanity why they mattered. Not because they were strong or smart or numerous. They mattered because they were kind. Because they helped strangers without asking why. In a galaxy full of ancient, perfect, powerful species, humanity's gift was simply being human. And that, in the end, was the only prize that truly meant anything. Daniel Hayes, ordinary human, stood beside Empress Zaritha as the arena filled with thunderous applause, and he thought about his sister back on Earth, about his homeworld's small place among the stars, about all the ordinary humans living ordinary lives without knowing that their ordinary kindness was the most extraordinary thing in the universe. They had come to prove they belonged among the stars. They had proven something far more important.